Welcome, ladies, and hopefully gentlemen, to another episode of the Revitalized Womanhood podcast. Today, I am joined with the beautiful Trina Glines. She is the woman behind the Taming Jane Academy, another women's community that I wholeheartedly support and am learning a lot about recently. And I'm so happy to have you here with me to spend some time and talk to our listeners, Trina.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have a good conversation.
Yes, I am so glad. So I'll introduce you first with a funny story for my listeners. How I even was introduced to Trina is what a small world we live in, and especially here in St. George. It is an even smaller world we live in, but I have figured out that it's small around the world too. We've figured that out. But I was sitting, getting ready for my retreat a couple weeks ago in Southern Utah, and I was sitting with my dear friend Lisa Brown, and we were going over what Lisa was going to be talking about at the retreat with my members. And I started telling her all about how I feel about things and my perspective on things. And she said, whoa, Gina, whoa, you have got to meet my friend Trina. This is so up her alley. This is 100%. And ladies, I text Trina. I don't know if I got on Instagram first or I text Trina and I'm like, oh, actually, that's what it was. She said she actually did record an episode with Ryan Mickler. She's like, I'm pretty sure she did. So I jumped onto that podcast episode immediately, right when I left Lisa, listened to it. As soon as I finished it, text Trina and said, oh my goodness, the universe has brought me to you. We need to connect. We need to do something, collaborate something. I love everything that you're about empowering women to listen to their husbands and understand their language. And we did. And Trina was so gracious that she even came up and was a guest speaker at that retreat. And I'm not just telling you that my women loved it, but so you might not know this, but on Saturday we invited the husbands that had come to stay with us and eat lunch. They actually prepared lunch for us. They're so sweet. And they got to stay and listen to Trina speak. And they left, and I think I told you this, Trina, but they left and they kind of were talking about it in the truck on the ride back to our cabin in Apple Valley. And Rick said, what did you guys think of that? And they said, that was amazing. That was so great. And I loved doing that and experiencing that with my wife. And Rick kind of had mentioned something like, yeah, like therapy or whatever. And they were like, no, I wouldn't ever go to therapy with my wives. But that didn't feel like therapy. And Rick was like, well, that's kind of what therapy is. That's just, you're kind of opening up and understanding something from a different perspective. And they were like, well, if that's what therapy was, then it was okay, because that was awesome. You won them over. And from that, we actually turned our monthly topic for January into the Shanti books. Is it for women only and for men only?
Yes, it is.
And so I have members that have actually already finished them both. And they're like, oh, we're so excited to talk about this. We're so excited to talk about this. And I'm like, well, hang on. I'm only at page 80. Give me a minute. Let me catch up. We'll get there. And they're just dying to talk about these things. And so guess what that means to me? That what you are doing, the work that you are doing, is so needed. It is so important. So enough about me talking on and on. Would you please introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'd be happy to. So I am a wife, a mom of 5 kids. 4 of those kids are married. So I have 4 in-laws that are amazing, and I love them all dearly. I have 5 grandchildren, and I have a wonderful life, but it hasn't been perfect by any means, right? There's no such thing. A motto I often say is that we are all perfectly imperfect. And so, and marriage is perfectly imperfect. And it probably now is more like 10 years ago-ish, we were just kind of in a really hard spot. We were in a really hard spot. The economy had really tanked. My husband was in contracting. And we had just a lot of things hit us all at once. And through our marriage, I have always considered, up to that point, that we've had a good marriage, but I was feeling a disconnect. I was getting my feelings hurt much more often. I was feeling resentment towards my husband on different things. And I just was so frustrated on where is all of this coming from. And so to shorten the story, I went on my own inward journey. Instead of pointing at him, wanting him to do these things for me, I went, what am I doing for myself and for him? I only have control over my part. That's something I learned through this process. I only have control over my part. I don't have control over my spouse. And so I went on this journey, and it has changed my life, completely changed my life, and my marriage and my relationships with all people, because I now understand women and I understand men at such a deeper level. And it's just opened my eyes to make such greater connections. And so through that process, I've been a teacher since I was in my early 20s, and I taught on lots of different platforms. And I kind of feel like it was some divine inspiration after I went through my own journey that I was like, I need to share what I have learned with women. So I just went full force, just completely, blazing the way, and, did lots of beta programs and wrote my program. I now have it as an online program, Taming Jane Academy. And I've taught thousands of women now, and I always tell the ladies, because they always want to give me credit, and I'm like, no. I'm just the mouthpiece. I happen to have a talent to be able to share and a desire and drive to learn. And I just shared that, but you are choosing to apply it. If your marriage is getting better and your life is getting better, it's you. Please give yourself credit for that. Give yourself credit that you were humble enough to want to work on it, humble enough to take some course called Taming Jane Academy. Like, who's Jane and why do I need to tame her? And that you were in a position that you were like, no, I'm going to give this a try. And then you actually were willing to see a new perspective and choose to apply that to your marriage and create your story, because that's what we're all creating our story. The story's going to have ups and downs, and the goal is to obviously feel more ups than downs, and or to still feel connection during those downs with our spouse. That's the greatest relationship we can ever work on, ever.
Yeah. And what you specialize in is kind of trying to help women understand, maybe bridge the gap in what we're saying, what our husbands are saying. You're bridging the gap in that disconnect in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. We could be saying the exact same thing, but neither one of us is understanding it, because he's saying it his way and I'm saying it my way. I think it was so funny. Ryan was actually on a podcast episode the other day, and he said, I wish there was a translator. And it made me think of you immediately. He says, I wish there was one of those. Have you ever seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball? And they put this translator on the monkey. And so whatever the monkey says, it translates into human, right? Yeah. So they understand him. And he's like, that's what Ryan described. He's like, I wish there was something that was for women to men that we could understand, and it would translate into men understanding it. Yeah. But that's kind of what you're doing. And I love that.
Exactly. I mean, that's the big part. A big part of Taming Jane is teaching the language of men. Like, women and men speak two different languages. We truly do. We are two different species in the human race. And we often think that our husband is just a version of us. Yeah. That people around us are just a version of us. They might think a little bit different, but I can so convince them to think my way, right? And we go into marriage often with that. I mean, how often have you heard of, newlyweds, girls that are getting ready to get married, and they're like, there's just this one thing that really bugs me about him, or she might be thinking of just consciously to herself, but that's okay, I can take care of it later, right? And you're like, no, it's not going to necessarily go away unless he chooses for it to go away. But learning their language and learning how men work, men and women are beautiful, beautiful people, and we aren't broken. Just because he doesn't think or work like us doesn't mean he's broken, or vice versa.
Well, and we talked about as well how society likes to break down the masculinity of men, and we see that now there is a war going on in this world of masculinity, and it's that's what we're trying to rebuild for our husbands and for our, any of the men in our lives. For me and you, our sons, right? We're trying to restore masculinity and its rightful place, because it's been beaten out of him. Was it you that said, it was probably you that said, I heard you say, think about a man's most natural instinct is to be an adventurer, is to be, have these grand adventures. And now look at what they do every day in our world. They go to the office. They sit at a desk, where driving a car basically drives itself to the office. Yeah. Where sitting at a desk, where a computer literally does the work for you, does all of the calculating, takes all of the thinking out of it. How emasculating alone is our lifestyle now for men. It used to be they'd go out and fight saber-toothed tigers or sail across oceans or whatever. I mean, that was instinctually, genetically encoded in men.
Yes.
And now where are we? I think that's why we are at the place in our world where we're at.
Very much so. I mean, men are, another thing I teach ladies is they are innate in their DNA protectors, providers, and procreators. And how often that we don't allow that protector part to happen, because women, unfortunately, to all you ladies out there, we're being taught that we are the weaker individual and we need to fight to be equal to men. And if we only knew and understood what men think about us, how amazing they truly think women are, and our capabilities to think about more than one thing at a time, to be able to do more than one thing at a time, to have intuition like we do. Men are in awe. I remember one of the seminars that I went to get educated and to be able to share what I share with ladies. They brought in a panel of men. And that was the best highlight of the whole seminar. They brought in this panel of men, and we were able to write questions down on a piece of paper, and then these men took turns answering these questions. And I just remember sitting there in awe, going, I had no idea how much men admire about us as women, those feminine traits that we're being told aren't strong, that we're being told are less than, when in all reality they are incredible. And I'm a feminist in the true definition of a feminist. I love the feminine part of me. And I use the feminine part of me to touch, connect, accomplish all the things that I do in my life, the people I am with. It is not a negative thing to be feminine. We don't have to fight to have our feminine qualities be more masculine. We got to be like men. Why? I'm a believer in God, and God didn't mess up. He didn't mess up.
I love that you just said that, because on my website, when I was creating this company, I put restoring womanhood to its rightful place.
I love that. So yes.
It's embracing and loving our, so tell me some examples of our feminine and what we are trying to smother out, or what gets smothered out in the everyday. Because one that you talked about at the retreat, I was like, wow, 100% the story you told. That's me and Rick, when we get alone and when we're by ourselves, not with kids, not in the house, not doing chores, not running around, when we are just he and I, we take our foodiversary once a year and we go, and oh my gosh, it is exactly what you described.
Yeah, you become a totally different person.
Yes. The
right?
woman.
Woman.
I go back to being the woman. I get to rediscover her. I get to find Gina. I'm not mom. I'm not, a podcaster. I'm not a PTA. I'm the woman that I've always been, and I get to be with my husband.
Yes. So one thing that's really great about that too is when I bring that up and I'm talking to both males and females, I will ask men, what does it do for you when your wife smiles, a genuine smile to you? Like really just smiles or laughs, and they all will be just like, it's the best. I feel like I've just won. I feel like I can do anything. Like how it empowers them and connects them to us is incredible that we don't ever even consider. And so what often happens is here, you were like free spirited, and, when you were dating and going through even those first years of marriage, you had much more free spirit. I often ask ladies, like, think about how you were then versus now. What have you lost? And what happens is, I have one person that I have learned a lot from, and she shares this, that accountability is actually very much a masculine trait. When we are being accountable for things, it brings out more of a masculine trait in all of us. And so as women, and as we are running a household and we're working and we are taking care of children and doing all of these things all simultaneously, we very much are being accountable for all these things. Well, accountability will often wipe out femininity because we now are taking on more of a masculine role, which we have to do. We have to do that. And it's not power is knowledge. When we recognize this and see this, then we can be like, okay, I know I'm kind of in a very accountable state right now. I'm taking care of all the kids and stuff. But tonight, when I go with my husband, I'm going to do a little bit of a me time to kind of release the accountability and be like, it's okay for me to smile, to laugh, to be lighthearted, to joke, to flirt, to share vulnerabilities, a spiritual side of myself. And when I talk about spiritual, it's not religious based. All those things, I wish I had my list in front of me. Just being able to connect with him with who he fell in love with. We change a lot as women. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I actually say it all the time that women, it's funny to me that they're afraid of change. Like most women, when you talk to them, they're like, ugh, I just don't like change. I like, whatever. And I'm like, you've literally, if we were butterflies going through the metamorphosis, we would have turned into at least like 20 different butterflies in our lifetime, right?
Yeah.
You are constantly just at the core of nature. You change 4 or 5 times. Not to mention, you take on these new roles. You take on these new personas. I had this great conversation with a gal from up north, and she, our culture, and she said, she made the statement, and actually this is in so many, I'm not just saying that, but she happened to make the statement that she was still a child when she was wanting so badly to be a wife, and she didn't know how to be a wife. She kind of pretended like she knew, and it was like ticking boxes, right? And that's how she went into motherhood as well. She didn't know. She was just kind of ticking boxes that she kind of saw that society was telling her that she needed to be this person. And she says, and it was a episode about her divorce, and she says, I look back and I'm like, I had no information. I had no concept. And that goes back to that question you asked us at the retreat. What did you say? You said, did anyone pull you aside and even ask you if you even knew that men thought differently, that they were different people than us, that they, that they have completely, everyone should be given, I really, really respect is it the Catholic Church that does the premarital courses? They are required to go through therapy together. They're required to go through like a, house, like having children, family counseling type things. And I think everybody should do that. I remember one of my friends, she got married later than me. And actually, it was interesting later than me because Rick and I got married kind of later in Utah terms. We were married when we were 25, right? So that was whoa.
Yeah.
And she got married later, and they went to therapy together. And I was like, I'm so jealous of that. I'm really, truly jealous of that because I hate the stigma that therapy is, you're there because you are at your wit's end. It is the last result, or the last step in this, something that's a trash can fire now.
Yeah.
But it's not. It should be something at the beginning that helps you communicate, that helps you understand that he's saying the same thing you're saying, but you're not understanding. So you're fighting it, or, whatever. I tell Rick all the time, I'm like, it's just someone telling us how to communicate better.
Yeah, exactly. And why wait for crisis mode to want to do it? Because once you reach that, there's so many resentments, there's so many heartaches, there's so many things that have built upon each other now that it takes a lot to pull through that. So why not do that in the beginning? And now everything I know, it just absolutely blows my mind that we send these couples off. We get them married, and we're so excited that, they found their spouse, and we're so excited for their life to come, and we're like, send them off in the sunset and like, good luck.
Bye.
See ya. And you're like, what are we doing? Right? Like, I've had 4 kids get married, and the first ones, I didn't share anything because I didn't know. And now the younger ones, they hear me teach all the time. And I think, look what we go through just to get a driver's license, right? Look what we go through to graduate from high school.
Passport.
Your passport, there's so many check the list things that have to be done, but yet marriage, it's go sign a paper and have some person say some words, and now you're married. And it just blows my mind now. I'm just like, I will forever be an advocate for couples seeking information and choosing to learn early on. Don't wait. But I'm also an advocate that it's never too late.
Right.
I've had a lady took my class, and this was back when I was teaching live. I was teaching live over Zoom, and she had been married, 56 years? And when she filled out the stuff saying, signing up for my class, and when I saw that, I'm like, oh, she could probably teach my class. I'm like, what am I going to say? And I'll never forget, because when we were introducing, and I said to her, I'm like, I'm like really honored that you're in this class, and I think we're going to learn so much from you. And she said, I believe you should never stop learning, because when you do, that's when you get old. And I'm like,
love that.
That is so cool. That is so cool that she was still so open. And in that class, I had another lady that had been married like 49 years. And to hear their experiences afterwards and the changes that they were able to create in their marriage of so many years, I was just in awe. I feel so blessed that I've been given this gift to be this mouthpiece, to be able to share information with incredible women all over. I just feel so blessed.
That's how I feel, the conduit. I'm the conduit.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
I have the same thing. I have a 75-year-old and I have a 20-year-old.
That's awesome.
And she actually, the 20-year-old came to me. Oh my gosh, the 75-year-old, she is such a handful. I just love her so much. The 20-year-old came to me actually and reached out to me and said, would this be a good fit for me? And I was like, yes, tell everyone you know, tell every friend you have, and I even have the ones that are not married yet, but they're living with someone, or the ones that don't have babies yet. And I'm just like, yes. You can't even believe. I'm so proud of you. You are taking these steps so early in your life. And that's why I told you before we started recording, you are a pioneer. I am a pioneer. I think that we really are. And like your gal said, you can never stop learning. And think about the information, how it's changed. Think about with parenting. What about when people were listening to Dr. Spock? When people were listening to, it's like new information constantly.
Yeah.
And obviously not everything works for everybody. So why not continue to learn and hear from what everybody has to say? And then you can incorporate the little bits and pieces from here and the little bits and pieces from here. And what's going to work for you? What's going to work for your husband? What's going to work for your kids?
Exactly. And I love that you point that out, because I think, obviously, I've read so many books now on this, listened to so many books on Audible. I mean, I had everything like on 2 times the speed. I was just trying to get all the information in I possibly could. And that's exactly right. Like, I took what resonated with me. And that's something I really want to, kind of express to the ladies out there. Like, trust your intuition. That is a feminine trait. That is a gift you have. Trust your intuition. What feels right, but it doesn't mean, and when I say that, I have to be very cautious. I have to be very careful, because we do live in a world right now that if it feels good, do it. And I don't agree with that. There's a difference. There's a difference of when something speaks truth to you. And so as you are learning and going like with the Revitalized Womanhood, and you are learning from different books and stuff, there may be like 75% of the book just really spoke truth, but there was the 25% you're like, I just don't know about that. Guess what? That's okay. Don't wipe out the 75%. Right? Because we all come with different backgrounds, different morals, different beliefs. And so what will resonate with some might not necessarily resonate with another. But like my gal said, don't let that stop you from learning. I think I wish women had a greater connection with who they truly are.
I'm sorry, I'm over here just writing all sorts of notes. It made me think of doing the right thing means doing it no matter what the outcome is, in spite of even what the outcome is. Doing the right thing is. And that brings me to thinking about when you have to have these conversations with your spouse, when you have to finally sit down and say, listen, we got to talk. And it's not easy. And it's not fun sometimes, a lot of times. Most of the time, it's not so fun.
Yes.
And you have to just hope that they'll take the information and sit on it and stew on it. And hopefully you've made some kind of a dent in it.
Well, and that is something we go into very deeply in Taming Jane. Women have a very disconnected connection with their needs.
Yes.
Right? Men have an extremely strong connection with their needs. So often to women, look at men as they're selfish. And that's not true. And when you learn that difference, it's very empowering for women to understand. But I teach women the needs conversation. I teach them, it's crazy. As I started this, I would ask women, tell me something you need. And they couldn't even come up with anything. It was like, really? We're so disconnected from it, we don't even know what we need. I mean, ladies, how often do you need to go pee and you hold it? Forever. I mean, the minute your husband feels like, I need to go pee, he's going to go pee. But we'll hold it forever. We have no connection to our needs. And so in learning the needs conversation, that's when you can have those conversations with your husband and have it go smoother, because you are now going to communicate in his language that resonates with him. It is empowering, and it also helps him. You set him up for success. You truly do. You set yourself up for success and him up for success as you learn that information, because we all have needs. We all have things, that we need differently from our spouse, and you have the right to ask for that. But if you ask for it in a demanding, belittling, angry way, they will always put their guards up. They always will. And so there's a way to do it without that happening.
I love that you brought that up, because that just brought me to what I wanted to talk about was I'm on your course to the part of emasculation, and I actually walked into Rick last night, and I let him listen. So I took my headphones off and I said, I want you to listen to this part. And it was you explaining what the long-term, short-term effects of emasculation and the long-term effects of emasculation. Because I resonated with the long-term effects, because I was like, anybody who knows me and Rick know that he does whatever he wants. I mean, honestly, and I'm fine with that. I do my own thing. I'm an independent person. That's fine. So for me to hear the consequences, the results of long-term, and I was like, oh, you got to hear this. And so it opened it up for me to say, do you feel this way? Do you feel like this is what I do? And he actually said, no, thank goodness. Like, okay. He says, but it's interesting that those same consequences, effects, results were what he was describing as stress, constantly being under the pressure of providing for our family, constantly being able to support us, constantly being able to, and even though it's so funny, it never shuts off, because we are fine. We're just fine where we are. But I don't know if it's the fear of, because like you, we lost everything and we had a very stressful, intense time when that all happened. So I don't know if it's like that, or why he carries this weight. And every single day he carries this weight. So what I'm thinking is him acting towards me. He's mad at me.
With that weight.
He doesn't like me. He's not attracted to me. He's angry at me. I'm doing something wrong. I was able to get out of him last night. This is what it is. It's not this. It's this.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, that sucks. Let's fix that for you, because that's a horrible way to live. But
well, and knowing that, doesn't it just give you that much more compassion?
yes.
Right? Like knowing how he is thinking and he's working, like opens up both sides to have so much more compassion and understanding for each other.
Well, and it sounds so simple. It sounds like something, because he's constantly telling me he's stressed about money. He's constantly talking about money. He's constantly, he goes through, he processes it out loud with it. And so for me, for most of our marriage, that felt like, Gina, you're doing it wrong. Quit spending money. You're doing these things to us. Now your podcast costs us this much. Now it's your fault. We can't do that. You know what? That's what it's translating to me.
Yes, it is.
You got your hair done today. It's your fault. We can't buy a new house. You know, like that's what it translates. It sounds so stupid, but that's what it translates. And so once I actually had let him know that that's how it comes across to me. And he's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. And I'm like, well, that's what it sounds like. You're blaming me for this stress that you have on yourself. And so anyway, we're 16 years in, finally surrounding ourselves with people like you and the Order of Man and now Revitalized Womanhood. And we're finally having conversations like this because we've been given permission almost to.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? It takes
that we have to be given permission.
Yes. Oh
yes.
my gosh, we're not alone. That's what the common thread, the common theme from my retreat was, oh, you all feel this way?
This way? Yes. Right? And that's why I love working with groups, because it opens up to the ladies going, oh, I'm not the only one. And we're not all that different.
Yeah.
Right? Like we are all experiencing very similar things. And so the group atmosphere, which that's how my course is taught, is, with other ladies in the class. And I mean, is that fun for you? You're obviously on week 2, seeing the ladies. I mean, they're not as talkative right now because we just started, but they'll get much more talkative. And it's fun to just know, even though it's not a live version, to hear other ladies' experiences it validates you, like, oh, this is fairly normal, or, type of thing. And then I was also going to mention back with what your husband has been feeling. I mean, it all goes back to he's the provider. It's an innate in him, his DNA. He's a provider, and he also holds a lot of accountability. And we can't take that out of them. Like, that is who they are.
And we shouldn't want to take it out of them.
You do. And you can help them feel more relief or relaxed when you have conversations like what you have had. And now Rick's carrying that burden. Rick's his name, right?
Yep.
Did I say that right? Okay. That Rick carries that burden. So now in your conversations, you can have more compassion in validating how he feels. Rick, that's got to be heavy for you. We're trying to do the remodel on the cabin up there, and there's so many things. And gosh, hon, I know that is heavy on your shoulders. And you're amazing. You always figure it out, and you are just amazing. You know how much that feeds him? You just heard him, understood him, validated him, and then backed it up with admiration and appreciation, which is a huge part of the language of men, because they're always questioning themselves.
You just wrote a mathematic equation. You literally did you hear it? You just said a mathematical equation for loving your husband and helping him feel seen, loved, heard, respected, whatever. But to play devil's advocate, I want to take you to this question because it's a process and it's an action. I want to hear some real life action steps because you've gone through it. I'm going through it. I go through it all the time. I think we all go through it. I was on this coaching group yesterday and it was interesting. So it was kind of like a Q&A, and I jumped in, and the first 2 of the 4 topics, it's so funny because I was like, wow, this is a common theme here. The first 2 were women talking about how they're so disconnected from their husbands and what can we do about this, and so much resentment. Like, I shouldn't have to pat him on the back every day. I'm not getting patted on the back every day. I shouldn't have to, oh, you're so amazing. Oh, I just love you. Oh, I just blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It was just filled with these 2 very common, and I bet if we would have heard from a lot more of them, it's a common thing that they're feeling in their marriage, that they're not feeling seen, heard, loved. So now it's turned into resentment, right? And so now they don't want to take the high road of saying, I'm going to work on me. I'm going to let you off the hook. I'm going to let me off the hook. And I'm going to start fresh, right? Start trying to see you through eyes of dating, what I saw in you before, the husband that I love, the man that I love, right? So here is, how do you get yourself to a place of, you gotta just let it go? It's not being a doormat. I think for me personally, that was the hardest thing for me, is I didn't ever want to be this doormat. I'm a very independent person. I never wanted to seem like I'm cowering to you or I'm submissive or, right? But that, it's like you're saying, our femininity is our power. It is our strength. Use it, embrace it, love it, and it will open up new doors for us. But how do you break through that shell that you've just created of resentment? Resentment. You don't hear that it bothers me that there's dishes in the sink. You don't hear that I go crazy that there's clutter. You don't hear that I need help with the kids. You don't hear resentment, right?
Yes. So I had built a huge wall of resentment around me during that period of time before I started learning all of this. And honestly, the key to it all is knowledge. The ladies need to learn literally how men think and work, because it changes everything. So so what happens is, as you're learning these things, all of a sudden those bricks started falling off. They started falling off because I had wrong perceptions. Remember, when we put our perceptions are our own lenses. They are how we have been, our blueprints of growing up, how we see the world, and it's very different than how somebody else does. right? So I would ask the ladies, like, let's take those perception lenses off and let's start anew. And let's choose to open our mind that maybe I haven't been speaking his language. I'm not feeling like he's speaking mine, but often the ladies don't even know what their language is because we're disconnected from our needs. And with that, so let me see if I can give you some examples. First of all, you need to know part of the language of men is men have a need to feel admired and appreciated. It is part of their language. So when you hear women say, why do I have to praise him for taking out the trash? Why? I don't need that. Well, guess what? It's not part of your language. Unless your love language happens to be words of affirmation, which it could be. This is different than love languages. This is part of who a man is admiration and appreciation. Men don't do things because they need to be done. Men do things to help you. So think about that. The trash needs to go out. We as women, the trash is full. It needs to go out. We just need to do it. For men, the trash is full. So what? The trash is full. Will you take the trash out? Sure. I'm going to take the trash out for you. So you can see they look at it that way. You can't change this. This is how men think. And they're not broken. And so in that little scenario, if you are assuming, which is what we all do, that he is a version of me, I don't need to be thanked for taking the trash out. But he's looking at it as, I'm going to do this for Gina. And so he goes and he does it, and he receives no thank you. You've now taken away his desire to do it again. Well, that didn't make me win. Remember, why do we have sports? Why do we have competitions? Men love to win, right? That's where sports and competitions came from, was like pushing ourselves. But you want to win. And our husbands want to win with us all the time. They're always keeping a scoreboard on how they are doing. Well, how are we letting them know how they're doing? Just because we don't need that. That's our language. We don't need that. I'm going to do the laundry because the laundry needs to be done. Period. If I get a thank you for clean laundry, that's a bonus. But if my husband was doing the laundry because I'm sick in bed, thanks, Jeff. That was so helpful. I really appreciate it. Now the next time it needs to be done and I need help, he's all about it because he knows I appreciated that he did that for me, not because the laundry needed to be done. Men do things because they do them for us, not because they need to be done. Our language is we do them because it needs to be done. We don't need to be told to do it most of the time, and we don't need to be told, thank you. But what happens is the resentments are building from all different aspects of our relationship. You've got these resentments. And so we're trying to dig and figure out where these resentments are coming from. And so often in doing that, we sit back and go, well, I never get thanked. That must be where they're coming from. They're really not. They're really not. They're coming from other areas of where the miscommunication, lack of communication, lack of feeling loved the way you need to feel loved is different. It might not be the words of affirmation, like the love languages. You might need to feel loved with quality touch. Well, you need to learn how to ask that because your husband might not have quality touch or not quality touch, that's quality time. Quality time, physical touch. His might not be physical touch, but yours is. Well, we all are in charge of getting our own needs met. We're in charge of that. But we so want our husbands to just meet our needs without asking. Look at men's relationship with needs. If your husband's hungry, what does he do? He eats. He's going to find the fastest food he can. If he is tired, and you're sitting there having a discussion on the couch, you'll fall asleep. We would never. That's rude. If it's not time to eat and I'm making dinner and you're going to come in here and start eating on some crackers, you are disrespecting me. You are so rude. He doesn't care about my feelings. And that's not what he's thinking at all. He's not going in and grabbing that cracker and go, I don't care that Trina's making dinner. I just am so hungry. I don't even care. Those thoughts have never even gone in his mind. But that's what we assume, because we assume they're a version of us. Because Gina, if you invited me over for dinner and I was starving, I would never in a million years walk in your pantry and start eating. That would just be flat out rude, right? But men don't work like us. They don't think like us, but we assume they're a version of us. So if he's eating that cracker, he's thinking like we would, and he's just like, I don't care that you're making dinner. I mean, I have a girlfriend that completely quit making Sunday dinners because all of her kids would come home from, their church service and start eating, and she was preparing food, and she finally just said, I'm never making dinner again on Sunday. It's too frustrating. And I was with her in the beginning. I was with her. And then after I learned this, I'm like, it's okay. I have 4 sons. They're sitting in church and they're starving, right? And so they come home and want to eat something. Now I make a little plate of something, some chips and dip or something, and set it out, hey, snack on this while I'm making dinner. Will be done in a half hour. Because they're single task focused, and that's all he's thinking about. So different. So really the answer to that question is, in order for us to get rid of our walls of resentment, we have to learn the differences. Because literally as you start learning those, the bricks just start falling off. You're like, oh my gosh. And your perception now is changing completely. And I'm sorry, ladies, I wish so bad that this would have been a requirement for you and your husband to have before you got married. I mean, I think this is something that should be taught in high school. I think, I have lots of single ladies take my class because they don't have a good connection with men. And it's because the world is masculizing us so much that we aren't giving men the time of day.
Yes.
We're not allowing them to enjoy our beautiful traits of our feminine. And being feminine does not mean you can't accomplish great things. It's not leave it to Beaver, mom sitting and, being the maid to everybody. That's not what I'm talking about.
But it's funny you said that, because my women here, do you see my June cleavers
yes,
back here?
Love them all.
I love them.
Yes.
I love them. Who did they always go to for advice? Who was always the one that everyone wanted to talk to or see when they got to the home? Who was, June Cleaver was a cool lady. She used her femininity. She did. And it's okay. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing. And oh my heck, what was I going to say before that? But then you said that. And I'm like, that's so funny. What I was going to say was, oh yes, that's it. Okay. So you keep circling back to the same common thread that I have totally. You probably saw me when you first said it. I was like, yes, the same thing I am running into, because when you first are introduced to the sisterhood or Revitalized Womanhood, even, I have the free 4 weeks to a fresh start email series that you can go do. And it basically is a baby step version of, this is how you have a vision. This is how you have a goal. This is how you set and it gives you, because why do we need these baby steps? Because we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to ask for what we want. We don't know how to ask for what we feel. We don't even know what we want. So how can we even ask for it? Mm-hmm. So first you have to know. And that's what I'm trying to break through this whole new year, new you, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I just did a post on this that was like, are you feeling stuck? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Yes. Because guess what happened when I started this business 7 months ago? I had to ask the girl that I had hired to be my manager, I had to ask her to help me set goals. I had been a mom, and not that was a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. I love it. I can mom life you under the table, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But in a business setting, I hadn't been using those muscles. I hadn't been using them, so they atrophied. So, and my husband was doing such an amazing job of making my dreams, even though I didn't sit down and say, these are my dreams. You know, we've had discussions of what we want our life to look like, but I didn't have to think, Gina wants to travel. Gina's going to make that happen, because he was making it happen. So I was just along for the ride, right? It was just happening. So for me to come into a situation where it was like, oh crap, I've got to make goals. I do. I have to have goals. That's I won't be successful if I don't first sit down and say what I expect of myself. And I sat there and was like, well, what do I expect of myself? Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what do you do when you come into this with your groups of saying you have to know what you need before you can even ask for it?
Yes. So the one thing that, just because of the personal journey I took myself through, I recognized that it was a build upon. And I had to start at this other part before I could get to the needs part. Because I had to start getting rid of the resentments. Especially when I coach women, because I coach women just one-on-one now. That's kind of all I'm doing, because I just have my online course. And when I work with them, they want to so jump to the needs part. And I'm like, no. You have to first understand, one, your background. What triggers you? And we spend 1 week kind of on our blueprints and what triggered you in your young. I don't get into a lot of really deep psychological stuff, because that's not my place. I'm not a therapist. But I've been to therapy enough that, I've taken a lot of what I've learned and, help them recognize where some of these triggers are coming from. And so slowly, then as they start to learn the language of men, the resentments are starting to fall away. There's more understanding. Because the last thing that men want is for their wife to take a course that day 2, she's coming and giving all these demands. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And that's why men are very leery of women maybe joining groups, because they're so used to the world emasculating them. They're so used to groups of women getting together and bash on their husbands. And you're eventually going to get to the part where I commit the ladies in the class to never, ever, one big thing is never, ever speak negative about sex, and to join this group of women that are choosing to not emasculate men. And will we do it perfectly? No, I don't expect perfection on that one, but on the sex part, I really hound that in week 8, because I think it's so wrong. It is so wrong on so many levels. But I'm going to get off track there. So as you're going, like I said, it's step by step. So as you start to get rid of the resentments and you start to understand how he thinks and he works, and all of a sudden he's feeling it. What the crazy thing is he starts to feel, by week 4, he's like, what the crap is going on with my wife? Because we have to earn his trust back. If we've been an emasculator and ladies, the one way to ask yourself a question is, am I different today than I was when we first got married, as far as my love, my passion for life, my want to be with him? Does he feel it? Do I feel it? And I mean, for me, the answer was such 100% yes. I was so different. So then we start, after we go through the language of men part, and then at the very end, I mean, the needs conversation is week 7, I think. Then I start helping ladies figure out even what their needs are. And that's when they do homework assignments, and they're like, what? And I just have them like throw it out there, just brainstorm, like, what are some things that you used to love to do, or something you've always wanted to do? And just list it out. And I tell them, like, ladies, you're not going to do all these things. It's okay, because women want to be very practical. We want to, that's just a wish in the air, And so we help just write those things out. And then through a process of kind of breaking things down and literally getting them to do one thing. Just one thing. Like, let's say I have a lady that's like, I really, really want to do yoga. I'm jealous of people that can go and do yoga. I really want to do that. Then we break it up for them on how they can slowly start to accomplish that. And it could be, I want to go back to school. I want to start my own business. Those things are really big steps. And even with moms with a very young family, I would love once a week to get out of the house by myself or with some ladies. I need that. Well, the process I take them through with their homework is how they can set themselves up to have that conversation with their husband, and to get her needs met, have him understand what those needs are, and have him recognize how those needs are important to me. And I'm in charge of getting them done, and I would love your support with it, instead of a demand, right? Like, yeah. Demands and criticism, those are kryptonite to men. They're kryptonite. I can demand to a woman and get away with it. I can be critical to a woman and get away with it. So we think we should be able to do that with men, but it's not part of their language. They completely put a wall up. So in order to get rid of those resentments, it's a process. And honestly, the needs comes later, because there's so much more in the upfront to even recognize how I got this way, how I got here. And once you start to release the word I use, and it's so fun because I ask all the ladies and the different words that they come up with to describe it. It is, for me, so incredibly freeing. I just felt a release off my shoulders. I don't have to be in charge of everything. Like, just so incredibly freeing. It was amazing.
I love that. That's awesome. But I'm going to circle back because you just said sex. And it's really funny that I actually just, I put a thread up in our network and said, hey, what are the questions we want to talk about? Because everybody's so excited to talk about these books we're reading. They are just like, I want to talk about this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, let's put your questions up, and then we'll go through them, and we'll open it up to the forum to discuss it with the whole community. So anyway, of course, sex works its way in. Women want to talk about it. Men don't think we want to talk about it, or they think, like you said, that we're just talking about it like in a negative manner. Yes. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, like, because that's what society shows. That's what the TV shows show. And that's what that the sitcom mom is like, I have a headache. I have a headache. Or even these memes. I follow a couple gals that are really funny, and they've got some funny memes, but a lot of it does circle back to the whole, I have a headache tonight, honey. Or maybe if I pretend to be asleep, or things like that. And it's like, that's so interesting, because especially in my journey of this, Rick and I, this is a big conversation for us. And it is obviously a big topic, hot topic for marriages. It is a big deal. And that's why, I just told you about the new shirts that Rick had printed, and on the back, it was, and I'm not going to I don't even know how, let's see. I've got a screenshot of it. Let's just see. Anyway, but I love how you explained it, like, men, their genetic code and how their mind works is their protect, provide, procreate, which everybody in my community, Ryan, is protect, provide, preside, right? So it's interesting that you've got those same, these are the men's, what they need to do. And procreate, that is one of them. That is one of their natural instincts. And so I had on Seth Studley on here, and he had mentioned it in one of his episodes, explaining it to the women of their community that I'm an elk, right? I'm in nature. I'm an elk. I need water. I'm going to go get a drink. The other lady elk aren't looking at me going, ew, you perv. You're going to get a drink out of that river? Ick, right? But because we are treating them that way about that they have these needs, and maybe we don't feel that same way because like me, I explain a lot that I'm in the young kids, everything's depleted, still nursing, I am touched out, I am just, so I have to remind myself that he needs me to think about that. I have to like, whether I snap my wrist with something or whether I have trigger things like put a little note in my car that's like, remember to flirt with your husband, remember to be sexy for your husband, remember he's got needs, right?
Yes.
So I do have to be intentional about that because right now in our life, that's not where I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's important to him, so it's important to me, right? And if I want him to respect me in things that are important to me that are not important to him, right? Maybe like sitting on the couch and watching a show together and that's our date night, or he cleans up the house and cooks dinner before I get home when I've been working all day because that is so important to me. It's not important to him. Like you said, his need, it's not a need. He doesn't care. He wouldn't make the bed. I'm just going to sleep in it again tonight. I'm not going to pick up the kids' toys. They're just going to play with them again.
Yeah.
It's not a need for him. He does it because he knows it's for me.
Yeah.
And that's okay. So I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yes. So men have a different relationship with sex than women. Men feel love through sex. Women feel love after sex. So men get that urge, that love, I want to be with her, all like at the beginning and through it. Where women, it's like afterwards we have that afterglow. Oh, I love him so much. And just, oh, I'm so grateful we're together. So we're opposite. We're completely opposite. And if you really think about it, God knew what he was doing. He made it that way for a purpose, because if we were both one way or the other, it wouldn't work. We needed to have somebody that had the drive in the beginning and the afterglow of love after. And I am a huge advocate of women not speaking negatively about sex, because our brain is the most powerful and important organ in our bodies. And what we tell it and what we believe will manifest itself because we are feeding it. And sex is part of who we are. Intimacy, sexual relations is part of who we are. We have 6 parts of self. If you have like a will and you have, your emotional self and your physical self and all these different parts of self. Well, one of those is sexual. And we are sexual beings. And the one thing, when I started working with ladies, I would say over 50% of women struggled with their sex lives that I've worked with. And just like we struggle to have a connection with our needs, we have a struggle of having a connection to our sexual self. It can be through our blueprints. It can be through where we're at, the phase of life we're in. And once again, it is something, just like you said, that has to be intentional and nurtured. Like, Gina, you have every right to enjoy sex as your husband. Men are not the only sexual beings. We are. And in fact, Jennifer Finlinson-Fife, who is a sex therapist, you should totally contact her and interview her. She's phenomenal. She's got podcasts. I've interviewed her. So her name's Jennifer Finlinson-Fife, and she's in Chicago. And she talks about how women actually have the capability of feeling sexual feelings at a deeper level than men. And that like blew my mind. I was like, really, what are you saying? She goes, well, number one, women can, not always, but can orgasm more than once, right? So that tells you can really get into it and have this incredible experience. Two, because of our connection with our emotions, it can be very heightened emotionally. And she's like, but it's just unfortunate because for centuries, for women, it was dampened, and for men, it was hoo hoo ha ha, right? And so we are having to pave the way. We are having to try and look at intimacy and marriage in a different way. And I love what you said, because it is intentional. It's not at the forefront of our needs often as women, but what good comes from it cannot be replaced by anything else. For them, for you, but you have to get connected to that sexual being. And we often think it should just come naturally, right? Because heck, when you were dating in your early marriage, it came really naturally, often. For some it didn't. And so if it's good, I should just naturally get in the mood. I should just naturally have a desire for it. Unfortunately, that's not the case. That's when we have to. And I love Laura Brotherson is another sex therapist, and she says the strongest and most important sex organ in our body is our brain. It is. It's our brain. It's what we are thinking. Like you said, and remember to flirt with him. Remember, But I would encourage you, instead of remembering to do it for him, to remember to do it for yourself. Yes, you can let it be a drive for him, just like he picks up the toys for you. Not that the toys need to be picked up, yes. But I think it's really important for women to work on being connected to their sexual self. And the fact that you already say that, like, know that that's important for him and that you want to provide that for him. I mean, that's beautiful, Gina. That's beautiful, because a lot of women can't even do that. And honestly, I've read studies that divorces, that sexual intimacy is at the very top of the reasons.
Oh, absolutely. I bet it's that and money. I bet that's the two top. Absolutely.
It is. Because
like I said, that is Rick's burden that he carries around and carries around and carries around. And I'm trying to explain that to these women. It's like, why are you, I don't know, I'm not shaming. I'm trying to just explain that maybe so they'll hear it in a way that a woman explains it, not their husband saying, why are you going to Target spending all this money? Why are you just wandering around the stores? Right? So I bring that up as an example all the time, because that's what Instagram is just flooding us all with these, I'm going to Target, da, da, da. And it's like, okay, so think about it this way. Your husband is at work providing, right? That's his need. That's what he's doing. He's spending time away from you, away from his family, away from doing things that he loves, doing things that are fun to provide, right? So Rick started putting it in terms of me like, okay, if that shirt is $40, imagine that I cannot spend X amount an hour, whatever, with you or the kids for another hour tonight. So I have to come home an hour later because you went to Target and spent money. So I cannot be with you for dinner tonight. I have to stay at work. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess that's true. It's so true. That's the way that they think about it. They don't think about it as like, so when you're out buying all the things, the Joanna Gaines, and don't get me wrong, I love Joanna Gaines. I love her. Everything's so pretty. I don't fall into that trap right now because my house is like a storage unit and we just travel all the time. So I can't do that. And it's more clutter. That's the other thing, is it just creates more clutter. But anyway, don't get me wrong. I love those things, but does that cute mat on your front porch, is that worth not being able to see your husband for an extra hour tonight? Is that worth putting off your retirement? Is that worth putting off traveling together, the family vacation this year? Is that worth... No, I know it's not. Sorry, you need to go.
You know what? Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking all those Amazon packages that come to my doorstep.
That's actually what started
I might
our
not go to
fight.
Target, but Amazon is my friend.
That's what started our fight last night. So I'm not above it, but however, what I spent money on was the adrenal cocktail that my episode with Leah just talked about. So I'm like, it's balancing my hormones, babe. Do you want to be happy wife, happy life, or do you want to be sad? You might want to be at work. If I'm not getting my hormones balanced, you may want to just stay at the office.
That's awesome.
So yes, same thing. That was what our fight. What'd you spend money on? Yeah.
Yeah.
I will let you go because you have to get to Vegas and go pick up your son. And I'm so grateful. Thank you for the scheduling and working with me, because it has been trying to get over 2022 into 2023, and now we're leaving. And thank you so much for working with me. And I'm so glad that you were here. And you and I have this is not just the end. This is the beginning for us. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
I am thrilled at what you are doing, and I would love to have more conversations, whether it's podcast or not. I would do it in a heartbeat. I just want women to get this information, and they deserve to have more joy and happiness in their life, even though it's completely chaotic.
Yes.
Like, we all deserve that, and it can be created through being intentional. And it's just, you are amazing. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Where can these women come and find you?
So they can go to trinaglines.com, and everything's on there. You can go to courses, and you can learn about my private coaching as well as the online course. And then they can also DM me on Instagram. It's just Trina Glines, and I will answer any questions. I will share resources. I will share about the books, different books to read. I want to just flood the information out there. Women need to know that there's options, and that they don't have to stay stuck. And please don't stay stuck in the walls of resentment. I was there for a long time, and it was miserable, and I know it aged me. I actually deal with a lot of health problems, and I really think a lot of that came from how intense I was for so many years. So it's important to release all that. And we're not going to release everything, because we have to be accountable for living and things. But man, it just opens up a whole new door to be in control of your life instead of your life being in control of you.
I love that. That was so beautifully said. Your episode actually follows Lisa's.
Oh.
So our mindset coaching will be the week before yours. So it's actually perfect.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just trinaglines.com, and they can ask me any questions they have. So
thank you, my dear. We'll see you later.
Okay, thank you.